Hello, everyone. Today is this is International Week of the Deaf, Day 5. I am James Ong, and I'm from the Singapore Association for the Deaf. Perhaps it's your first time joining us today. So let me introduce to you what exactly is this IWD, International Week of the Deaf. It's an event celebrated annually by deaf communities worldwide through a variety of activities. Now, these activities display our pride in our deaf identity, community, language, and culture. So in Singapore this year, IWD 2020, the theme is Sign Languages Are for Everyone. This is the theme for International Day of Sign Languages, right? That was observed on 23rd of September. So this year, the IWD event in Singapore is different as compared to the past years because it's the first time that we are all going digital, using a digital platform. So we hope that with this platform, it allows us to reach out to more people and we get to share more about the deaf community. So during this digital IWD event that started on Monday, throughout this week, we have posted new content videos every morning at 10 a.m. and we have our Facebook live stream from 7 to 9 p.m. So this morning, we've posted 3 videos. The first one is Meet Our Community Interpreters. Second is Stories in Sign, titled 3 Billy Goats Gruff. And the third one is also another Stories in Sign, titled Haunted Roads. So for our Facebook live stream tonight, we'll feature our next Deaf at Work interviews. So this Deaf at Work series aims to showcase different types of jobs that the members of deaf community have. So our guest for today is Amar. Amar is a dancer from Redefinition. And Redefinition is a deaf dance group that has participated in events internationally. So Amar himself has had the experience internationally. So before we meet our guest, we would like to introduce to you our speaker of the day, who is Lisa Low. So Lisa will be sharing about deaf blindness. Lisa herself is deafblind, and she has been strongly advocating for the deafblind community. So in our speakers sharing, we'll have Q&A sessions. So if you have any questions that come to mind, do send them in through the comments. We'll try as much as possible to answer all your questions, okay, because it depends because we have limited time, right, for the Q&A. So without further ado, let's meet Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Would you like to
Hello.
introduce yourself?
My name is Lisa Low, and this is my sign name.
Great. I'm really excited I look forward to your sharing. So again, a reminder to the viewers. Yeah. So Lisa, you can take over now. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, so hello everyone. Thank you all. A warm welcome to everyone to the International Week of the Deaf. And also much thanks to the organizers who have planned the International Week of the Deaf event for the entire week. Today, I'm going to give you a presentation on understanding deaf blindness. I hope that more people would be more aware of deaf blindness and what it means to be a deafblind person. So, what is deafblindness? Deafblindness is a combination of hearing loss and sight loss that affects the communication and access to information. So, this term is used by many countries around the world when referring to deaf blind people. So, let me relate my personal experience as a deafblind person. I was born hearing, but at the age of 1, due to high fever, I became deaf. Later on, I was enrolled in a deaf school which taught me in sign language. So I grew up with sign language. And then when I progressed education wise into secondary school, I realized that I wasn't able to see someone, I think in secondary 2 or so. There was a friend who tried to get my attention from within my peripheral view, like from slightly behind me. But I didn't see that happening. I thought there was something wrong with me, or maybe he was wrong, but no, it was a small matter then. But then again, it wasn't just a one off occurrence, it happened more frequently over time. Later on, when I was about in my early 20s or about 22 years old, things became progressively worse. It seems like, in dim lighted conditions, when I'm walking outside, for example, I tend to bump into people. I would say, sorry, oh, it's my mistake. So my eyesight was getting worse, so I decided to see a doctor or an eye specialist who then diagnosed me with retinitis pigmentosa, or in short, RP. So let me just show you the word. Okay, so I will explain to you more in details on this term in my next few slides. At that time, I didn't know what retinitis pigmentosa was, but the doctor told me that it will progressively become worse and will lead to complete blindness in future. When I found out that I had RP, I went through quite an emotional journey. Back then, there was no support for the deafblind in Singapore. I went through the 5 stages of grief. I was very emotional. I took about 2 years or so to come to terms with my new reality. I am very, very thankful that, I happen to know about the Daskin leadership program. It's a training program. Very thankful to the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Federation of Singapore, or in short, DHHFS, because they told me about this program. So I applied for it and I was successfully accepted into that program. So DHHFS sponsored me to later on learn about more deafblindness in that program. And the reason why I applied for this program was because I wanted to learn more about the accessibility that deafblind people should be accorded with. I felt that, there were no resources here. I had no knowledge about what things could be done for the deafblind. So that is why I decided to go to Japan for 10 months under that program to learn more about deafblindness. It was a very eye-opening experience, very amazing. I learned a lot. And I went there with the intention of coming back to Singapore to apply what I learned and share with everyone here. Okay, so back to when I first realized I had RP. I would like to let you know that there is another syndrome which is quite associated with retinitis pigmentosa, and that is Usher syndrome. These two are quite similar. I will explain more in depth soon. So on the left, you can see that the image that someone would see if they had normal vision. The one on the right is a view that a deafblind person would see if he or she had retinitis pigmentosa. So you see, it's a tunneling kind of a view. So that was why I had trouble seeing someone trying to get my attention in my peripheral view then, right? So I'll go on to the next picture. The picture on the left, you can see is the retina at the back of the eye. And it's quite, it has a lot of nerves. So the picture on the right is, you can see there are some black spots on it, on the retina, right? Those black spots are actually a type of cell. Actually, these are types of cell, rod cells, which functions to capture light as it goes into your eye. And these would enable you to see clearly. So that explains why I couldn't see very well in dim lit environments or at night. Usher syndrome would look like, would be different in this way. Let me just show you. So, RP was what I explained. It was about the eyes, right? As for Usher syndrome, it is when someone has retinitis pigmentosa as well as deafness. So, in other countries, majority in the deafblind community know about this Usher syndrome, but over here we don't really know much about it. So it is useful to learn about this new term, Usher syndrome, here. So a deaf person who has retinitis pigmentosa would be known as having Usher syndrome. So anyway, I met a lot of deafblind people. Many of them actually have Usher syndrome. And some of them also have other ailments. Next, we move on to talking about tunnel vision. So I've already explained to you about tunnel vision, where your vision narrows, right? So now I'm going to talk about the second type of vision loss. So as you can see from the picture, the central part of the picture is kind of, you can't really see it very clearly, right? And there's a third type of vision loss. For example, people with diabetic retinopathy, they will see gaps in their vision. Fourthly, low acuity, such as cataracts. This is where you would see your vision blurring all around, for example. And it's very interesting to note that people who have retinitis pigmentosa or Usher syndrome can get cataracts in future. Actually, those with retinitis pigmentosa will get cataracts. So just last year for myself, the doctors told me that I had cataracts at a very mild level. So now my cataract is not very serious at the moment. Cataracts usually affect people from the age of 30 to 40. So now I'll talk more about the hearing. The deaf part about deaf blindness. I won't explain too much in depth because I believe that all of you are able to know about deafness from your own research and knowledge. And I will now explain the causes of deaf blindness. So the causes of deaf blindness are separated into two categories. One, congenital deaf, meaning someone is born with deaf blindness, and also when someone acquires it on the way. So there are 4 different types of causes that fall under this category: congenital deaf blindness, meaning someone is born with deaf blindness. And this category is for deaf blindness that are acquired as someone grows up. So these can happen when someone moves along their ages, maybe due to accident or Usher syndrome or different types of illnesses that are age related. So now I'll move on to the challenges that deafblind people face. The first, isolation. Many deafblind people feel isolated. We also have a second second challenge, which is the communication barriers, because not many people are aware of how they can communicate with deafblind people. And this barrier also exists because not many deafblind people know how to use sign language and or braille. So those are the things that lead to the communication barriers. The third challenge is access to information. For example, if a person cannot see or can't hear, then they won't know who is going in and out of the room. And they also have limited access to information of their physical environment around them. So just to share, recently, there was a woman who was deafblind herself whom I met. She had no access to information on COVID-19. For the entire 6 months from the beginning of the circuit breaker period, she didn't know. She said, COVID? What was that? What is that? So I took some time to explain to her the knowledge that I knew about COVID. It took about 20 to 25 minutes of me explaining the entire concept for COVID. Then I realized, oh, deafblind people actually face this lack of access to information on current news. So I feel that it is quite hard for deafblind people. So just to say that the last 2 points contribute to the first point of isolation. So you can just take a look at this graph chart. There are 4 different categories of the degrees of deafblindness. People who have total deafblindness, people who are hard of hearing and deaf, people who are deaf and partially blind, and people who are hard of hearing with partial blindness. So all these 4 categories of deafblind people, are they the same? Definitely not. They vary just like how deaf people do. So as I mentioned, there are 4 different categories for deafblind people. They communicate in different modes. They face communication barriers, right? So there are different ways that they communicate through. So just to illustrate to you, I'm going to play a video that I created when I was at the Daskin Leadership Program in Japan. I managed to make a recording of what I saw, the different communication methods, and I'm going to share with you what I saw there and how they can communicate. So we can show the video now if it's possible. Okay, so you have seen the different communication methods as shown in the video, right? So I did learn a bit of tactile interpreting for deafblind people. In the last part of the video, there was someone who was also using braille fingering. For myself, I'm not skilled yet at this. It is quite hard to learn, but I do intend to learn it. So let's move on to the next slide. So I've explained to you about how to overcome the communication barriers. Now I'm going to talk about access to information. So there are 2 types of things that I would like to say. One is interpreter, and the other is the interpreter guide. So an interpreter for sign language plays a different role from interpreter guides for deafblind people. Sign language interpreters interpret from spoken language to sign language and vice versa, right? However, interpreter guides for deafblind people do not do the same. They do express themselves through sign language as well as describe the surrounding of the physical venue and orientation of things in the vicinity of the deafblind person. So the roles that the interpreters play are different. And for deafblind people, the interpreter guides have to be trained in the proper way to be able to convey this information. As for access to information, the devices and tools that are available, how do deafblind people access to information? They can use braille display which is a machine that connects to a laptop also to communicate with others. Unfortunately I don't have the picture of the communication tool with me today, but it's used for deafblind people. Usually it comes with a screen as well. So there is this device that will translate everything into Braille on it so that people can communicate with deafblind people via Braille. That is the communication tool, sorry. So now we are talking about the Braille display, which is also another communication tool for the deaf. So as you can see from the picture here, this is a Braille display. Which helps deafblind people get full access to information. So just now as I mentioned, interpreters as well as devices and tools. Should we provide everything for the deaf-blind person? Actually not, because it depends on which the deaf-blind person prefers and is comfortable with. Some deaf-blind people who grew up with Braille will know how to use Braille. Next, we move on to mobility guiding. Will a deaf-blind person move out, be mobile and move out on their own, out and about? Usually, they require someone to accompany them around. If the place or location that they are in or going out to is somewhere that they are familiar with and they are able to move about safely and efficiently, they can go on their own. However, usually they would have someone to accompany them otherwise.
So let me share with you on how you can approach a deaf-blind person. So there are do's and don'ts in when you communicate with deaf-blind individuals. So perhaps it's your first time, you know what to do. Maybe you can ask the deaf-blind what sort of communication method they use. So one way is you can, if you want to guide them somewhere, if for a guide, you take a lead by laying their hand on yours and then on your arm, and then you can lead them. So remember, the deaf-blind person shouldn't be behind you. It should be he or she should be in front of you, right? So so that the person has fully trust in you and know that you are guiding him in the right direction. Yeah. So that is one tip on guiding. So now I'll talk about the do's and don'ts. Based on my experience interacting with the deafblind community in Japan, as well as my observations, these are the things that I remember. So the first one would be throwing things or waving really loudly in front of them to get their attention. Please do not do that. The best way is to tap them gently on their shoulder or on their hand to get their attention. Be polite. Okay, that's a more polite way to do it. Right. So the second one, let's say if you're in a conversation and in the group there is a deafblind person, right? Do not startle him or her and do not just jump into the conversation. You need to introduce yourself first. It's important to have a turn taking, to practice turn taking in your conversations with deafblind persons. Yeah, so they know who is talking. All right. So moving on to the third point. If again, if you're in a group conversation with deafblind people, please do include them in the conversation. Right. Whatever is being discussed within the group needs to be informed to the deafblind person as well. The fourth point is you need to be considerate because the deafblind, they cannot see. Okay, for example, if you are outside or you're eating, having a meal with them at a table, so you don't just leave them alone, all right? So you need to explain and describe to them the types of food that are on the table in front of them. For example, there's rice and other dishes, right? So you need to inform the orientation of the items on the table as well. And so that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for your presentation. Your presentation is truly because it reminds me of an experience that I had with deafblind um, because there's a American deafblind person who came to Singapore. Yeah. So he came to Singapore, and initially I was really nervous because it would be my first time interacting and in contact with a deafblind person. So I was wondering, what should I do? Can I grab his hand? How what are the do's and don'ts? So um, initially I held his hand, and then he taught me that, oh, I learned that I need to gently tap him on the shoulder, things like that. So I really learned a lot through my interaction with this deafblind person. And I was really apprehensive, like I wasn't sure how to communicate with him. So then based on my interaction with him, and then now I compare with what Lisa has shared, I feel, yeah, it really resonated with me. And then after a while I learned how to guide a deafblind person. And then he showed me ways of how he communicate as well. So he when I tried tactile signing with him, he was able to grasp the information really quickly. I was so amazed by that. And I tried tap, and it felt really like natural and normal for him. So after a while, I was able to understand how he communicates, and it was really fascinating for me. So we all share one common thing is that we are all deaf, and we also have to include the deafblind community, and also we have to be aware of this group of deaf-blind people, how do we access them and how do we communicate with them? So thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing. And I believe all of us have learned from your presentation. Okay, so now we'll have a look at the comment section to see if there are any questions that pop up. All right. Okay, so we have a question. How would I be able to help deafblind if I don't know tactile sign language and I happen to meet a deafblind person in public? So let's say if there's a deafblind person in public, and how do I approach this person? How do I help this person?
Right, okay, thank you so much for that question. The most easiest way for you to communicate with them would be to write out the letters and spell out the letters of short, simple words with them, like dinner or where do you need to go. Just spell it out on their palm, and then they will be able to understand you.
Mm-hmm. So to write on palm, is it in English language? English?
Yes, write in English, but it depends on the individual deafblind person. Maybe you ask them whether they are alright with English first.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say if they don't know English, maybe they are Chinese educated, then you might have to spell out on their palm in Chinese characters.
Okay. So let's say this deafblind person is not literate in English, doesn't know English. So, and I don't know how to write on my hand. So yeah, in public, like how else can they help the public, members of public?
For me, I don't feel that that is a very common thing. Usually, a deafblind person will not be found alone outside. Usually, they have someone accompanying them. And usually, if they are independently walking around outside, they are probably are already equipped with methods of communication that they can use independently.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's take a look at the comment section. There's a question. Okay, we have another question. Okay, so when guiding a deafblind person, what kind of information is important for the guide to tell the deafblind person? What kind of information is important for the deafblind person to know? So usually when they're out traveling, the deafblind person will be accompanied with a guide. So what kind of information is important for the guide to tell the deafblind person?
Ah, I see. Okay. So, well, let them know what is happening in their surroundings. For example, let's say I'm informing the deafblind person of what is happening. It depends on what their interest is. So, for example, if they are interested in some event happening there, sports or something, let them know things that are relevant to their interests, especially match what their interests are. For example, if they are interested in shopping or things on sales, let them know as well. It's very important to be selective, but be very comprehensive about what information you give to them.
Mm-hmm. So the guide has to be the same person all the time, right? Because the guide needs to know what the deafblind person likes. So if let's say there's a change of another guide, another person, all the information, all the interaction between the previous guide and deafblind person, it will not be you know, so the next person will not know what the interaction between the previous guy, right?
Yes, that's right. Let me just explain. There's also another important factor other than relating their interests. So, for example, let's say there are steps or bumps on the in front of the person as they're walking, right? You can also tell them how high the step is. This would be important information to convey to them by signing, for example, or by the way your body moves, so they can feel it. Yeah. If you would like to learn more about how to become an interpreter guide, there's a lot of resources on the internet, and there's a lot of specialized knowledge that you can learn and pick up.
So if there are high steps or bumps, as you mentioned just now, so we need to inform the deafblind person as a guide. Mm, how would you let them know what's the height of the bump or the step?
Right, okay, so let me show you an example. So I will do this on their shoulders. This indicates that we are going down. If it is a very long drop, I would indicate the height of the object in between the fingers and the thumb, and then indicate whether it's going down or up. Usually they will understand. I know that in the first time, the physical touch component as well as how to communicate such information is going to be a bit awkward for you, but over time you surely get familiar with it all.
Okay, so now we're waiting for more questions to pop up in the comment section. So I'm going to ask you. Mhm. So you're fully deaf and you're partially blind. So how do you feel? What are the challenges that you face on a daily, like your daily basis? What kind of barriers do you face right now in Singapore? Hmm. Okay, sorry. Uh, just to rephrase again, what are the challenges that you face right now in Singapore? Yeah,
Sorry, again,
struggles.
which question was it? Could I have that question again?
Okay, so as a deaf-blind person, so what are the challenges that you face currently in Singapore as a deaf-blind person? Yeah, a lot of frustrations you might have experienced.
I think mainly two things. Sometimes in discussions, people forget about me, especially at night when we are chatting away in the dark. They forget and leave me out because it's that they forget that it's dark and I can't see their conversation. They are having brilliant, wonderful conversations there, but I'm not included inside. That commonly happens for me. And the second challenge for myself, I think, would be that some people they don't know that they're blind or that uh, it is no fault of mine that I'm not paying attention to them. So these are the more common challenges that I face every day.
All right. Okay, so we have another question. If a deaf person gets older, and let's say the age is around 40, will it be affected by his or her learning when it unexpectedly happen by itself? So as he gets older, will his blindness deteriorate? Yeah, that's the question.
Could I have the question again? It was not too clear.
So for a deaf person who's probably in his 40s, right? So will he be affected after perhaps affected by his learning?
So if I get you right, does the deafblind person already know sign language?
Yes, the person knows sign language. Yeah.
Okay. So the person already knows sign language,
Yeah. Yes.
but they are having some tunnel vision. I think the first thing they should do is to quickly learn Braille and tactile sign language. Get used to it as soon as possible. How tactile sign language works.
We
Under
will
that.
wait for while we wait for other questions. I'm just curious. I'd like to ask you something. So I understand that there are various needs and various communication methods. There's tactile signing, there's cute, different ways. Yeah. So what are what some examples that you use?
Well, yes, there's not only the few communication methods. There are so many possible ways that deafblind people can communicate. So if you see in the video that I showed you just now, actually these different communication modes are the more common ones. I think it's called Tadima.
Adoma?
So if you watch Helen Keller, the show, she doesn't only use one communication method. She is equipped with many different modes of communication and also Tadima method of communication, which in which where you put the hand, she'll put her hand on the jaw of the person speaking, and she will be able to tell what the person is saying. So actually, Helen Keller uses this Tadima method as well. In Singapore, so far, I have not seen this method being used. So I've kind of, maybe it's not even.
So is it an old-fashioned method?
No,
Would you
it's
call it
not
that?
really what you would say that Tadima is still being used in some countries, especially in Europe, for example. It's still being used.
Ah, okay. All right, we have another question. So based on the deafblind community you've interacted with here, can you share with us how are their education, employment, and their socializing opportunities here in Singapore? Because you have seen the deafblind community in other countries, like in Japan, right? So do you see there's a difference between in these three areas for the deafblind community in Singapore and in Japan? Yeah. Can you make a comparison with other countries that you've been to? Yeah.
That's a good question. So when I was in Japan, I stayed there. They had a lot of resources for deafblind people. I'll just tell you a short story. So there was this one deafblind person, a boy. He's actually born fully deafblind, but he managed to get education. Let me tell you how he did that. His parents taught him from even when he was an infant, and he also learned Braille in school. So they quickly equipped him with a form of language so that he'll be able to acquire more language and knowledge as he grows up. So then later on, after he picked up Braille, he equipped himself with sign language so that he could communicate with both and access to information using both language. So now he's a master's graduate. I'm really happy and very proud of him, and he's also very happy of his achievements. There are other deafblind persons in Japan. In terms of employment, they do have jobs. There are those who are university educated there. And back to talking about resources, how do we gain access to jobs and education? We need, in Japan, we have a ready pool of interpreters. For Singapore, we don't really have interpreter guides yet for the deafblind. Support in the education settings are also lacking. So in comparison, yes, Singapore is quite lacking in comparison with Japan at least. So really, in future or beginning from now, we should start looking into providing more resources for the deafblind community.
I see. How about socializing opportunities? Do they socialize? How do they do it?
All right. So previously, when I was staying in Japan during that time, right, I did meet deafblind people for the first time there. We all socialized. There are dance groups, percussionists. It was really amazing for me to see that they do have social life there. But it is important that they had a pool of interpreter guides with them for these socializing activities. In Singapore, we do not have this yet. So really, it means that we need to set up a pool of support in terms of IG interpreter guides for the deafblind community. So if the Singaporean deafblind are not supported in terms of socialization, it is because of the lack of interpreter guides.
Yeah, I do agree that it's important to have an established pool of interpreter guides to provide support for the deafblind community that will enable them to access the society. Yeah. And this will reduce the anxiety, and especially, for example, in education, if a student is found to have deafblindness, then the support is important for them. For example, they need to learn a different communication methods like sign language, things like that. So I think resources are really important to support the deafblind community. Let's see if we have another question. Let's see. Oh, we do have one. So this question says, I have a friend who has an issue with her sight. However, she's not proficient enough in sign language. I've already advised her multiple times to learn and be proficient in sign language so that she's able to communicate. However, she chose not to believe that she will be blind one day. How can I ease her into the world of deafblind?
Hold on a minute, let me clarify. So the person is already deaf and then becoming blind?
Yes, yes, deaf is already deaf, but I'm not sure though. Probably not very proficient in sign language. Probably, uh, perhaps communication method currently they use is speech. Yeah.
And what about the age? Yes.
I think it depends on the how old the person is. Probably 40s.
Okay, so really it depends on their wishes and will. If they want to learn, then they can learn more. If they feel that they are not ready yet, then it is really up to them. Previously, as I told you, when I was processing the changes that were happening to me, I wasn't ready to embrace the steps that I needed to take. So it takes time for a person.
So who would you think is considered a strong influence on you? Has a strong influence on you? Gives you the motivation.
It's only when I realized when I had, that I needed I needed time to quickly go and do things that I needed to do.
I see. So it's to instill a positive mindset. Okay. So let's see if we have other questions. Okay, we have one. The question says, the first question is, are there any statistics on deafblind population in Singapore? And are there any technological devices that the deafblind people can tap on? Again, to repeat, how many deafblind people are there in Singapore, and are there any technological devices that deafblind people can use that can help our deafblind community? Yeah, these are the two questions.
That's right. So if I hear you right, you have two questions. The first is on statistics, right?
Yes.
Numbers of the population. And then I think it will be 0.001% of the entire population in Singapore. Again,
Wow,
0.001.
0.001. Wow. It's very
Out
small.
of the 5 million. So that would be around 500, I guess. Roughly around there. Only 500, right? But these are just estimated statistics. Here in Singapore, from what I know and have met, there probably are about 30 deafblind people whom I already come to have met or known about. Well, because in Singapore here we don't really have enough statistics, and we don't have a census of who are experiencing deaf blindness. So we really need to have more resources being put into place on the statistics of the population. Um, but so far, from what I see, 30 people who have been very open about their identity. The second question that I had, let me, if I get you right, you're saying that there's a lady's name by the name of Xiu Ling. Just to answer the second question.
Mm-hmm.
A few months ago, she actually had a video made of her where she was using the braille display machine. Remember the photo I showed you, the purple one with the. So she was trained and she knows how to use that. But again, as I mentioned, not all deafblind people were taught to use such equipment.
It must be difficult.
It really depends on the person whether they are equipped with the right devices and tools and so on. Like I say, deafblind people all have different needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do you think? What devices or equipment do you think that will that will benefit you?
For
None.
me personally, I don't use devices, so I just live as per normal.
Okay. Oh, we have another question. So for the deafblind community, they depend heavily on physical interaction and touches or tactile signing. So would I need to ask for example, okay, let's say we need to have some physical interaction on the arm. I think yeah, but which parts are like inappropriate, like appropriate and inappropriate touches?
Sorry, who are the two persons in the question, in the situation?
So we have to check with the deafblind person first if they're okay with being touched and which parts are appropriate to be touched. We have another question here. I think Lisa has already answered just now. So, any other questions? Okay, there's a question. If I happen to meet a deaf-blind person and he or she happens to have a problem, such as falling down at the platform, how should I help and make sure that he or she is fine and know how to get around? How do I assist and help this person up? Okay, so let me explain. So there's a deaf-blind person in public. Let's say he's walking and he falls, right? So as a member of public, I catches him and how do I help? But I mean, most of the time, if for a deaf-blind person, if they're independently mobile, traveling around their own, but if let's say they fell, how do we help and make sure that they are fine?
But do you personally know the deafblind person?
Hmm. Okay, with interpreter guide. Mm, okay, maybe it's your friend. Okay, let's see. Sorry, let me think for a bit. Okay, I'm not sure if we know the deafblind person, but maybe we can have another question. Okay, you don't know the person. It's a stranger. You don't know the person, and this deafblind person falls. Yeah. So how do we help?
So one of the important things that we need to establish is how do you get to know that the person, or how do you know that that person is deafblind? So I think it's not too clear a question at the moment. Could I try to see how it is like?
Sorry. Trying to get. Okay, never mind. We'll just move on to the next question. So for a deafblind person, what kind of entertainment do they enjoy? How do they entertain themselves, and how is this interpreted to them? Yeah, maybe you can share with us some examples from experience. Your experience interacting with deafblind community, maybe attending parties or going for plays, going for games. Yeah.
So I have this very interesting experience to tell you. I went to Japan. I met so many people. I observed that the deafblind people, many of them were very interested in eating food. They love food. Yeah. So I realized that there was an interest group there. In Singapore here, um, as well. And they also like to do crafts, sewing, arts and crafts, things like that. They really enjoy that. For songs and music videos, not too much. For the deafblind, they're not really interested in that, as in they prefer arts, things to do with their hands, folding things. Usually what is provided to them will be arts and crafts. So food and arts and crafts. Mostly that's what I noticed from abroad there.
So for food, you mentioned food. Is it they enjoy it through the sense of smell and taste, right?
They just love to try different tastes and textures of food. Yeah.
Mm. So they get to experience the different types of cuisine and different types of food. So if let's say you were to introduce a new dish or new, cuisine to the person, how would you describe and how do you explain and interpret to him?
Just let them know the name, and then the deafblind person, as they taste the food, they can remember that taste and texture of the food. You see, many deafblind people love to eat because it is like
Stimulate their
it's a form of
senses.
enjoyment for them in terms of the senses. That is just how what they like and how they find an enjoyment.
So do the deafblind people enjoy watching movies?
Not all, but some. Some movies that come with audio description. Like you said, there's action happening in the movies. There will be description of the action that is unfolding in text. So that helps them to catch up and follow up with the action unfolding in the movie. So audio descriptions and subtitles are also very important. really helps the deafblind, yes. But not all deafblind people enjoy movies.
So for the deafblind, they're able to enjoy movies with the captions and uh, through, let's say, the audio, they're able to experience those sounds, right? If let's say the sound of rain, things like that. So, so do you think a deafblind person can live alone on their own, or they must constantly be accompanied with a guide or need assistance from someone? For example, if they need to sew or to cook, does this mean that they they cannot live independently, or are they able to live independently? Yeah.
So deafblind people should be early on equipped with life skills, independent sewing, independent living skills. When I was in Japan, I visited my friend's home. She's a deafblind person. She lived alone. She cooked her own food. You know, she served me some of her tasty food. So they can live independently and alone at home.
Wow. So this person lives in Japan on her own. Wow. She has her own house.
Usually for Singapore, deafblind people uh, live together with their family.
You mean in Singapore?
And in Singapore, there are very, very few deafblind persons, yes.
Um, okay. Let's see if we have any other questions. Okay, we have one. So just now, someone mentioned about a deafblind person falling down, right? So how do we help this person? Mm. So let's say he's out on his own and then he falls. So how do we help this person? I'm concerned that the deaf guy will be in a panic state. Yeah.
So the first thing you can do is ask, do you need help? If they refuse your help, then just respect their wishes.
I see.
Does that answer the question? Is that alright?
Yeah. So let's say I notice this person fall, deafblind person fall, so I can provide assistance. Yeah. So I mean, it's good that we check with them. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, there's a question here. In Singapore, is there anywhere we can learn tactile signing? And it says here, understand that haptics is not much used in the deafblind community in Singapore. Let me repeat, haptics. Yeah, it's not much used in the deafblind community in Singapore. So perhaps you can share with us what haptics is. HAPTIC.
So haptics is, let me just try to explain clearly. So in some countries, they use this form of communication which is called haptic communication. It is different from tactile interpretation. Tactile interpretation uses sign language under the hands. So for example, if there was a tree, right? And it's a really big tree, and I'm a deafblind person, my interpreter would not just explain tree, that's it. They will explain to me the texture of the tree, the bark of the tree. It is rough, the color is so on and so forth, the leaves, the shape of the tree, describe through touch using the arm, the entire arm. So you include a lot of details about the tree. That would be haptic. For example, for eggs, let's say if you are sitting in a circle formation, you can use haptics as in locate items and their orientation on the deafblind person's arm. So you can see this object is here on the arm, this one is here on the arm, and what is happening by using the arms of the deaf person to indicate the location of objects with one another. In America, they also use this, but they call that pro-tactile.
So is it
Pro-tactile.
the same?
So actually, this is also known as haptics. The concept is exactly the same. You look at things on the arm. In Singapore, well, some deafblind are not too familiar with that. So usually we communicate using tactile sign language, which means using sign under the hands. But haptics or protactile is something that is more commonly used. Perhaps you'll be more familiar for the deafblind in future. But it is a very unique form of communication for every deafblind person as well. So, as a person who is approaching the deafblind community, you need to respect the methods of communication that the deafblind person uses and chooses to use.
So you need to respect their preference of sign language, I see, or
Yes.
communication methods.
So, whether they use protactile or haptics, then you follow the language that they use.
I see. So what is commonly used in Singapore? Is it like up to individual's preference, or is there any around the world, deafblind communities around the world, what is the preference?
It is quite the same concept, I guess.
Okay, so we have another question. Will there be an avenue or resources available to uh, gather these deafblind to provide them the support and also do more research on them as necessary in Singapore? Are there plans
What
for that?
was the question again? I couldn't catch that.
Okay, so in the future, will there be more resources provided and research going into establishing support for the deafblind community?
Well, of course, I hope that in future there'll be more resources for the deafblind community. But definitely, it won't happen overnight. It will take some time to bring in more resources. And of course, I hope to be involved with research for the deafblind community. Currently, there are none. So I really hope that in future research would produce some results.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering, Lisa. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, this is pertaining to COVID-19. What new strategies are used for deafblind interpreters and deafblind guides, and how do you adapt to the safe distancing measures? And how do they, because they need for the deaf, I believe the interpreters or the guides, they need to touch, right, the deafblind. So how do they adapt to the safe distancing measures and wearing of masks, etc.?
I know it is a true challenge. Usually, deafblind people are isolated at home. The interpreter guides will usually make the first move to.
Okay, you're fine now, Lisa.
I'll just repeat that again because of the screen. Alright, so the interpreter of the deafblind guide is the one who will explain and convey the information to the deafblind person. I think over here, most of the deafblind persons are at home most of the time. So yeah.
Yeah, true. Okay. I really can't imagine being isolated at home. I mean, you still need to go out to buy the necessities in the shops, right? So if the safe entry, you need to check in and check out, things like that. I really can't imagine the kind of challenges that they face in this situation. Yeah.
Some people they are very lucky because they still have their family members with them.
Yeah, family support, right? That's really important.
Because they get to live together with their family at home for some deafblind people.
Yeah, great. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Let's see. Okay, there's a question here. Will there be an avenue available to gather this deafblind to provide them the support? So for the deafblind community, where or how can they get support? Yeah. How?
This question is a bit tough to answer because things can't happen overnight and it takes time. So what is important is that we get all the resources ready first, and then we can slowly move on step by step to move things into place.
So it's safe to say that right now there is no support for them at all.
Because of the COVID-19 situation, the plans have to be postponed. So I was involved in a project. However, these all have to be postponed in terms of the progress till after the pandemic is over, I guess. So I'm really hoping for when it can resume. Hopefully next year.
So you were talking about you're working on a project. So what would it look like? Does it look like?
It's like some activities for them, give volunteers also experiences interacting with deafblind people. I think it's good to begin things that way.
So this project I foresee that you would have to gather the deafblind people. And do you think in the future there will be the setup of the deafblind association?
Yes, that's right. Well, in Japan, they do have a deafblind association. So they have a deaf association and a deafblind association. So it is preferred that deafblind people have their own independent associations. But it does take quite a lot of effort, as I mentioned. Yeah.
I see.
You need a ready team, you need ready resources, you need quite a lot of planning. So, yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so there's another question. Is there a strong deafblind community in Singapore? Or are the deafblind part of the deaf community or the blind community? So just to share again, so for the blind community, are they strong in Singapore? Is the community strong? And do they identify themselves with the deaf community or the blind community?
Well, the deafblind community itself is not very strong. They are actually a very
Visible.
invisible community. You get what I mean? So there's not much there's not much of a strong identity for the deafblind community. Probably in Japan because they are all together, but in Singapore everyone is more on their own, so the identity isn't that strong. I think there was another question.
Yeah. So do they identify themselves with either the deaf community or the blind community?
It depends on the deafblind persons themselves as the identity that they have and that formed when they were growing up. So if they identify themselves as being more with the deaf community, then that is where they would connect with more. Otherwise, it'll be the blind community that they will connect with more. So we would say that they are kind of fluid in their identities, like on the fence, kind of. So they are in the middle of both, and they are part of both.
So in Japan, the deaf blind community is strong, right? So they have strong identity, the deaf blind pride, right? Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, let's wait for any other questions. All right, we have one here. It says you mentioned quite a bit about isolation and feeling isolated. So how do you and your community deal with that? I think that would be very important to have a strong family and mental health support. So what this question's asking is you mentioned about isolation and then you said about having family support. It's really important. So um, how do you think this isolation can be solved? These feelings of isolation.
So in terms of family support, we can't have this always for 24/7 for the deaf community, right? It's not very desirable. In Japan, do we provide support 24/7 for the deaf blind person? Definitely not. And usually the interpreter guide is not a family member because it is considered as a professional job in Japan. So there are some ethical boundaries. So definitely interpreter guides and support cannot be for 24/7. So the best is that the deafblind person is being taught life skills for them to live independently. They have a right to be able to live independently. And then I think there
Yep.
was another point
Mental
about mental
health.
health.
Yeah.
So if a deafblind community is ready, then it would be easy to improve their access to mental health knowledge and address the mental problems that they might face. Remember, I told you the story about explaining to the deafblind lady about COVID. Because she couldn't meet anyone for about 5 months due to the um, outbreak. For her herself, her health is not as good as before. And for 5 months, when the communication that she had access to was minimized, it does affect emotions and the mind of the person. So yes, deafblind people are quite affected by that.
Yes. So I think looking into the mental health support is really important. and providing this kind of support needs to be available for them.
Yes.
So are there any other questions? Okay, so we have no other questions. All right. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for joining us today. There were so many questions and wonderful questions that come up, and it's wonderful to see that there's so much interest, in finding out more about the deaf-blind community. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Okay, so we have just witnessed Lisa's presentation about deaf blindness. So you see how the community plays an important role in the deaf-blind community. If, let's say, a person grows up as a deaf-blind person, we need to know, to provide that kind of support so that, and also for the society to learn how to provide support for them, and also to establish a strong deaf-blind community in Singapore. So as Lisa's mentioned, there are various needs within the deaf-blind community. There's a diversity of needs. So there are devices and different communication methods that we learned about. So now is the time for hashtag Deaf at Work. So firstly, we'll be watching the interview with Amar, right? So let's find out more about him, okay, before we meet him for the Q&A. Let's play the video.
How long will this job be?
Joined 2010, so now already 10 years.
Yeah. It seems long.
Yeah.
Oh, long.
So we just see my whole adult life.
Oh, nice. Hey, hey, hey,
Sound
hey, hey.
when
Hey, stress lah.
How you found this application? How you found out?
First, I heard from my friend, other deaf friend, say that, I have one deaf dance group performing at Esplanade. So the event is called Y Test. Organized by Esplanade. This event always have hip hop showcase, a bit of a competition, and so remember Y Test, they asked VDF to perform. So okay, I curious. Was wow. And from that, I realized that some is there. I know some of my friends for them inside with them. So I try to contact, and they asked me, you interested to join?
Because you don't know about that or Timon.
At first, when I very young, my father always play, Bollywood.
Bollywood.
Then
Yeah. You
so
always
my
copy.
copy.
So means that from young already have
Yeah.
some skills to see copy.
So I started taking dance seriously from secondary school.
Mm. It's 14.
Yeah, but I start about 17. Yeah. seriously.
The thing is serious than eating down with that thing.
Yeah.
What inspired you to become very serious about dancing?
Because I find out how powerful or inspiring when I see people use their body to express their dance. I feel like, wow. So one example was MJ, Michael
Jackson.
Jackson. Wow. Then I learned from the YouTube. Repeat. And then I decide, okay, this is how I want to be in the future. I remember last time before we left, right, I want to go for class outside.
Oh.
I'm not confident. I don't know where to find. I don't know who to find. So when I joined with them, Jason and Mitch, they introduced like guest dance instructor. So I got to learn one from which studio. Then I follow. Then from there I learn. Okay, I go this studio. I learn this studio. I learn. Then from there I make friends. Then so slowly.
Was it okay because you are that bad when you go to a studio for the first time? Don't you feel like worry? Can I keep up with them? Can I understand the instructor? So your concern how?
Yeah. I felt that I was alone. So when I remember very clear, I always start from the back of the class.
Oh, you mean the dance that you always back?
Yeah, back. I just learn. Then later over the years, I one step until I'm in front of the instructor. Then
Now you
okay,
already in front of the instructor.
now I'm the instructor.
Now you're the instructor. Wow. Can you share about how you fly to UK, Norway, and what happened?
So usually they have like deaf event or a deaf festival. So they find us on, I think, over the years we build our website, our Facebook. So I think from there, then they see, oh, we there from Singapore. Okay. Yeah.
How you join this invited
Deaf festival lah. Yeah.
deaf festival lah.
Yeah.
You were invited to there lah. So what was the experience there? I mean, you exposed to full deaf festival. What was the
I remember the first white country, which is France. That was our first white country. So we are all Asian. So we zero knowledge about white country, like how they behave, different. So I remember we eating, fun eating. Then we see a lot of deaf on the table. We like, meaning what? Bon appetit. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit?
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Eat well. Like that. Oh, this is good. Have a good eating. Oh, okay. So we follow. Yeah. So it's like.
Wow. Funny, interesting.
And the dessert. For Asia, we think of ice cream, dessert, but for them it's different. It's like cheese, yogurt. So we like.
This is dessert lah for them.
Yeah. So when they ask us to choose dessert, then we where ice cream, where they have the what is dessert. It's very interesting.
So now you are freelancer and also a dancer.
Yeah,
Right? Are you proud of yourself now?
very proud. Some days I feel like, wow, I'm the best chef in
I think you're
Singapore.
overconfident. So when you receive a song, you were first what your steps?
Oh, first, music
Music.
volume.
Oh,
Wow. Okay, then I will pick up some. Then I will see how to break it down. Then I will put the dance move inside. And also some music have their expression. Like, oh, this music, happy music. So if I'm dancing sad, like, then you play happy music, don't match.
actually.
Yeah. So I need to understand the movement, need to understand the music flow.
Ah, I know that is very complicated, but I do hope that more of the day will understand the dance more of the expression of the music. So it's in the same way also can help them express themselves better.
Yeah. Understand. That can follow the step, but to apply the step with the rhythm is different. So one step, okay, but follow rhythm, so everything will break down.
So how what to do? Still pati.
Yeah, a lot of practice.
So means that actually you want that you practice yourself a lot more time, correct?
Yeah, and I always encourage my readers to not feel the rhythm, but to learn about the rhythm. So I noticed that with that when we learn at first we always like very simple tak 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 tak. Then slowly we we learn how to break down into different timing tak tak tak. And we play a while. Yeah. So they have a experience of how your body can react to different timing. Like when how to go fast or how to go slow. Yeah.
What about for the definition, the end goal?
I think for recognition, we always have one goal in mind, that is to provide the platform for them to explore opportunity to learn dancing, to 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 see if uh like to I think experience what it's like to dance, and also is to also have a belief that art can also be a way to survive and to make money. It's not always like a hobby.
I understand because you know that many people think that deaf can dance, you know that.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest challenge that you feel that other people like misunderstood about deaf dancers?
I think they will think that, oh, deaf cannot mix with music or don't know how to appreciate music.
That's the biggest challenge.
So last time what I know, I saw a lot of deaf always start art from photography. I see many deaf photographers, but very little in dance. Yeah. So I think when they saw a few people interested in dance, then they feel like, oh, now maybe the deaf focus is more not only photography, but you can choose maybe illustration or dancing, many. So I also feel that it's very hard to influence the other deaf that, hey, deaf can also dance, like know how to feel music in different ways. Like doesn't mean you cannot hear music, meaning you cannot dance.
Then what you think about the other deaf guy when they asking can dance? What will you say to them?
I would say yeah, but first dancing is not only music, it's about your expression, your body language. And deaf is very good at body language, gesture. So why not take advantage of that? Yeah, then music you can learn later, but focus on what your body can do first.
Yes, good.
Express.
Yes, good.
Hello. Hi, Amar. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Watch the video. That was a very interesting sharing about your experience. I'm sure the audience are in awe, trying to learning and interested in your journey. So let's check out the comment section and see what questions are there for you today. Hey, you got the first question. You mentioned that you are a freelancer. What kind of work do you do?
I do film making. I do dancing. I also conduct workshop, and I do teaching for dance. And also, apart from that, I'm also doing theater practice. So many things that I
That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, let's see what's the next question. At what age will you stop at and start to be an instructor to teach the deaf and hearing? If they are keen to learn, at what age will you stop and be an instructor?
I think I won't stop, and I cannot stop because I'm very active. So now I'm already 28, and now I'm already teaching both deaf and hearing people. So for example, like I'm always invited to give workshop to teach about dance, how to move with your body, and how to appreciate your facial expression. So that because that my important focus is visual. Okay.
Okay. So does Redefinition participate in competitions? Have they participated in competitions before?
Have, but only one time. But besides that, I have joined many competition myself. So like the highest score I got was top 4.
Wow.
And the reason why it's hard to join the competition is because of music, rhythm. It's very hard to listen to music and trying to see how to better.
Okay, maybe you can tell us more about the competition.
Hmm.
Maybe not not just what red definition experience, but for yourself, your personal experience in the competitions?
So usually, better will start with audition. So after past audition, you will join top 32. After that, top 16. After that, top 8, top 4, top 2. So when I joined and I passed the audition, I was like, whew. After that, top 32. Okay, better. Pass. Then finish. So better is very tiring because you have to be creative. You have to know how to reply their dance. So when my competitor, I watch, okay, idea, I will reply. And with the music, I think that's where my weakness. Because music, sometimes I cannot follow music or reply. So like a lot of time I'm always stuck. Oh, shit, never mind. And in the end, sometimes the judge were like 1, 2, 3, 4, meaning draw. Every time.
Okay, we have another question. So now in this COVID situation, what's the next plan for redefinition?
For now, the definition is doing very slow. We are progressing very slow because with the it's very hard to uh, book studio. It's very hard to get people to come because maybe I think they worry at a lot of restriction. Yeah, so we are taking things very slow. But looking forward, we want to focus on ourselves, training for the time COVID at home. Yeah, so we want to start again to train, and then hopefully maybe in the future we can do more performance. Oh, I miss that thing so much. COVID.
Okay, but you can practice online, right? Through the video conferencing platform.
This is a good question. Why? Because I want to share about my experience with online teaching. Okay, so first problem for the deaf is always music. And if you play music, but the audience will see online will be different. Dance, music, no. So there's a lot of difficulty how to be more accurate. And second problem is the space. But if I dance, oh, yeah, and always I cannot show my full body. Now you cannot see my legs. Yeah, so recently I was teaching online for deaf kids in Japan. Problem like I have to first my body, that my leg. So a lot of, but I'm thankful the Japanese kids really yeah, shout out to the Japanese kids.
Okay, We have another question. So I see that you're wearing headphones. Does that help you better with listening? Do you use them for all the time or maybe just for listening to music?
Oh, now I'm listening to music. Yeah, but because I grew up orally, and my father always introduced me to many music. So I got a lot of exposure about music and sound. And last time I used to wear hearing aid. Have now I so I depend a lot both sign language, and also sound. My hearing level now is severe, so I can still hear music but need volume. Last time, okay, now I getting, maybe I'm thinking in the future my hearing will, so never mind. You just take the wheel.
Okay, so if there are people who are interested to join redefinition, how can they join and are there auditions? Will there be auditions that they have to attend to?
Okay. So if you want to join with definition, we have a website. Yeah. Where there is a form to fill up, and then you can join us for a trial class and see if you are interested to continue. We welcome all deaf people to join us and enjoy. I think it's not to be scared. Oh God, I don't know how to dance, how to start. You can always come to redefinition because we are providing a platform where we want to offer deaf people to feel comfortable, to feel relaxed. It's the same experience when I first saw redefinition performing on Esplanade. Deaf, I'm deaf. Why not join? Because we have the same interest. Yeah, and they make me feel very comfortable, relaxed. You take things slowly. But of course, I had a difficulty with communication because I grew up orally. I didn't learn a lot of sign language. So when I joined WeDeaf, I was stuck. Like I'm deaf, but I cannot communicate with my other deaf members. So 1 year I observe visual learn. Okay.
Okay, we saw that you had commented on another hashtag deaf at work guest. Let me ask the question back to you. Do you have any difficulty stating? It's a personal question. Yeah. So
Okay.
up to you want to answer or not.
So yeah, I will answer. I think it's good that we are very open-minded. You know, we can ask anything. So when dating, at first I didn't have a lot of confidence because like I can speak, I can talk, but if a person were to speak back, how to reply because I cannot hear. So first problem was that, but later I realized that you can always communicate in other ways like phone, blah, 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 or like talk really simple English, uh, simple gesture. But I always make it a point to explain my deafness Now, hey, I'm there. So please be nice to me. Thank you. No problem. No problem.
So which means you don't
We
have any
can.
problems, right? No difficulties. So right now you are currently dating. You
No,
go on dates.
I'm on Tinder.
Okay. The next question. In redefinition, are there hearing people? And if any hearing person want to join, is there any criteria for them?
Last time, where we used to have hearing and deaf members in the group. So usually, if we see any hearing interested to join, we have to like interview them. What's the reason you want to join us, and how can you help us? Because in redefinition we want to make sure that we have a equality, same mindset, and to be fair. Equal.
Equality, what do you mean? For example, maybe is it for them to understand about the deaf world?
Yeah, correct. That's one point. That's good. Also, we want to have more deaf people lead the group, lead in dancing or teaching.
Yes, correct. It should be led by a deaf. That's right. Okay, let's see if there are any more questions. Okay, just one question. Oops, one more question, right? So,
Yeah, it's always
so for the interview,
one-to-one
you have
battle.
one-to-one. Oh, battle, sorry, for the dance
I
competitions.
never experienced any deaf. I'm always battling with a hearing person. So yeah, it's fine.
So you mentioned that you were in, you
Yeah,
went through the battles and you went to top 32 and then eventually emerged top 4. Wow, it must be quite a challenging journey, and I'm really amazed to hear your story. So amazing. So unfortunately we don't have any more time for Q&A. All right, so thank you so much for sharing, Amar. Oh,
like and share.
okay. So once again, thank you, Amar, for joining us for this hashtag Deaf at Work series. Great. Okay. So that was our guest for hashtag Deaf at Work series, right? So that concludes our program for today. So just now, Amar has shared about his journey, showing his strong determination, going through all the different dance competitions and emerge as one of the top dancers. Wow, out of the so many competitors out there, he emerged top 4. That's really amazing. And we take pride in his achievements as a deaf person, right? We're really proud of him as a deaf community. So again, today's the last day of IWD 2020. Thank you so much for watching all the way, following us through from Monday all the way to today, and watching all the posts and contents that we've uploaded in our Facebook. But don't worry, they are still accessible after the event, so you can watch them anytime. So all the content and the posts that we have uploaded, all will be there, all right? All the way from Monday to Friday. So you may watch them anytime, as I mentioned. So we welcome your feedback. After this event, we really welcome your feedback and support to help us further improve on our upcoming IWD in the years to come. So we really like to thank all our speakers and our guests for #DeafAtWork. For myself, I have, watched all the happenings going on in the past 5 days and being involved in the organizing of this IWD. I feel so amazed and really so grateful for all the participations. And also one more thing that I'm really grateful for is the staff who has been working behind the scenes, right, for IWD 2020. So where are they? Come and join us on screen. Hello. Like to join us on screen? Come on, there are more people, right? Okay. All right, so you can see all these people on screen. So they have been the ones who have tirelessly worked behind the scenes as hosts, as interpreters, as preparing the entire program. Really, thank you so much to the staff for all your hard work. Okay, so what we'll be saying, okay, everyone together, 1, 2, 3. Happy International Week of the Deaf. IWD. Yay, applause.